my fellow Americans? Are we reaping our harvest of greed? Have we built our house on sinking sand? Why are we being ugly Americans?
Good morning. This is Friday, Update Fridays, and this is CJ Holmes, founder of Homeowners for Justice, your producer and host for today's show. And as usual, there is just something breaking news like 5 minutes before the show. And so I will be talking about that today. But I'd already planned, to reiterate what a giant Ponzi scheme we're in. The fact that bankers have a corrupt sense of impunity. I've pulled that out of a video I'm going to be showing later in the show. It's fabulous. It's the discussion amongst academics about ending the fractional reserve system. I'm going to play the whole video. It's, a little hard to hear sometimes, but you'll have the link. And that brings me to why Livestream has been crashing. We finally figured it out. It turns out, I have all these links for all these articles and videos that I want you to have access to directly if you want to listen to the whole thing, repeat just that part. And it turns out that some of these links, when I stick them in the comments, the Livestream server misinterprets those links and creates a mess that then it can't resolve. So it hangs. Every time you try to open up the Livestream, it's trying to resolve this messy link. So I've learned better what to look for, and I promise I will do my very best to not put those links in there. I use Bitly, if you're familiar with that. It takes a big long link and it shortens it to a short link, and none of those links will ever be confusing to any servers. So we're gonna fix it. It's not yet a conspiracy. And I thank you so much for all of your support and for sharing these links and information with us. And we will work forward together to make sure that the news gets out, that the people are aware of what is really going on. And I do get a lot of information that sometimes I choose not to share. And today I'm going to have some links, but not really play any of them like on the false flag, because I do believe we have entered in general into a potential false flag situation in this country, where that basically means the government would conspire to create events that will manipulate the public's morale and feelings and willingness to take on, lose privacy, things like that. And that's a decision that you're going to have to make. We all have to make these individually. But I will give you the links so that you can watch them and see what others are seeing and sharing. Because I do believe that at least you need to see what's out there. And that reminds me, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. I show that on one of those little intro video pictures, and that is so true. Every time I see that, every show, I go, ignorance is a choice, because we have so much information available now. But the key, of course, today is the end of the fractional reserve banking system actually being discussed by people other than Occupy or protesters like I would view ourselves. And then we're going to have with us Dr. Carmina Hadley. She's from Colorado, and of course has experienced the foreclosure crisis up close and personal. And I've asked her to share her story today, and I want to tell you, I get these stories all the time. I can hardly bear it, but this is what millions of people are going through individually, and we are still fighting and working to stop this mess. So without further ado, let's jump into some of our little news articles today. We've got quite a few. I'll zip through them. And of course, mortgage relief checks go out only to bounce. So here is what the checks actually look like. And of course, my first thought when I saw this, because I look at so many forged and fake documents, is, gee, that looks like a robo-signature. I don't know if it is, but the fact is this particular article said exactly what I said yesterday. It struck me that if a company is given like $3.6 billion, don't you think they'd try to float that for their own profit? And now that's what they're talking about, suspecting that this Rust Consulting has something else up its sleeve besides just, dispersing money. And then here is the update of the independent foreclosure review payments. This is from Washington, and the second wave of 1.4 million checks totaling $1.2 billion was sent today to borrowers eligible for payments under the independent foreclosure review payment agreement, bringing the total number of checks sent to date to 2.8 million checks worth $2.4 billion. And again, may I remind you, if you got a check, that means you were eligible for a payment, which means that there was something wrong with your foreclosure, which means they should have proof of that, which means you should be able to get proof of that, which means if you have proof of that, you should be able to win in court. So let's help others to follow through on this. And so here we go. Giant Ponzi scheme. And we know that we're in this Ponzi scheme. It's so helpful, though, to hear it said and to pay attention. These are not Occupy people that are saying these things. These are respected former government employees that are saying this. Here's David Stockman again.
Could I ask you, Dave, when did you get this religion? I mean, when you came to join Ronald Reagan as his budget director, after a storied career as a very young, up-and-coming congressman, when did you just say, wait a minute, this isn't adding up?
Well, when the numbers started not to add up.
And when you presented that to Ronald Reagan, what did he say?
Well, I mean, I laid that out in my first book. He just didn't want to believe it, and he thought quickly it would get better when the recovery came. The recovery came. The deficit was still $200 billion.
But the boom more than offset the concerns about the deficit, right?
It didn't.
Well, that was the argument.
Yeah, that was the argument at the time, but it led to the very terrible legacy that deficits don't matter. Cheney actually said it explicitly. The Republican rank and file adopted it. I don't know if they really believed it, but it was convenient.
Well, what's worse, to build deficits based on tax cuts, if that's your argument, or excessive spending?
There is no way that a deficit...
There is no good red, right?
No, there is no way that a deficit doesn't become a tax increase sometime down the road. We are burying the next generation in debt. They will have to service
But we're burying it
that.
with only a select few. We're taxing more. And half the people pay no federal income tax at all.
Of course they don't.
So isn't that disproportionate?
Well, look, at the whole system is out of kilter. And as we get down the road and finally the day of reckoning comes and we have to begin to manage this debt, which is totally out of control, we're going to be taxing everybody.
Well, when will it happen? When do you think that happens?
I think we're getting close to the point where the Fed can no longer buy all the debt.
The next couple of years?
Yes. I think the bond market...
So the end of the Obama term would look like what?
Some major dislocation. The bond market right now is...
Well, major dislocation, a market tumult, depression?
I think we're in the biggest bond market bubble in history. And it's being held up by fumes because the few people left believe the Fed will keep buying, keep propping everything up. But the minute they lose confidence that the central bank can print our way into permanent salvation...
Then what?
They will start selling the bond, and others will sell the bond, and there will be no bid, and there will be a crescendo.
Well, where will that
down.
money that siphons away from us go?
It gets liquidated. This is all debt on debt. Nobody owns the bond. They borrowed 98 cents to buy it. And
it's not as if the U.S. loses money interest and it goes to China or goes somewhere else.
No. I mean, this is a giant Ponzi scheme. It really is. It's just debt on debt on debt. Nobody really has any equity left in this system anymore.
Why don't we just do an Argentina and just declare bankruptcy like they did?
Well, I don't think the largest economy in the world can easily declare bankruptcy or default on its sovereign debt.
Well, what do you think of our defense to keep our AAA rating? The defense is, well, we can always print money. That's why we have a AAA rating.
Well, if that were true, then I don't know why we've been working so hard all these years to save, to sweat, to build, to produce, to work. If it was so easy that you can just have a central bank, print enough money for everybody, drop it out of a helicopter, and tell people, pick it up once a day and party on. You know that isn't workable. You know that is kind of crazy economics, but effectively that is where the Fed is taking us today.
Do you think, though, that the reaction you're getting from Republicans who are really pissed at you, Democrats who say you're just heartless and callous, and even your old Wall Street friends who say you're just, crying fire in a crowded theater. How do you feel about all that?
Well, I sort of let the chips fall where they may, okay, because it's all part of the same syndrome. There are a lot of people who don't believe that this bubble on Wall Street today, we're at a point where we were 13 years ago, same point, dot-com crash, they reflated it under Greenspan, got there in 2007, 2008, crashed again. Now we're back to the same level, 1560.
But a lot of people look at multiples in markets and things like that, David, say it's actually pretty cheap.
No, the market is dangerous. It's not
So
cheap.
where do you put your money?
In the mattress or under it,
Really?
as the case may be. No, I think it is unsafe to be in these markets. All the risk markets are basically being inflated by the Fed. They're all trading on the Fed. They're not discounting future earnings, whatever they say about the multiple. If the Fed put out a sign that said, "Gone fishing," for 6 weeks, there would be calamity in the markets, because everybody who comes on daily to tell you buy, 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 why? Mainly because the Fed is, injecting the heroin, it's got your back, and as long as they're doing it, keep buying. The minute the Fed stops, the whole environment changes, the confidence changes, the psychology changes, and the bubble is revealed. This is the greatest bubble yet.
All right, on that happy note, if you have a syringe at home, you can now stick it in your eye. I want to thank David, because, he does make you think. Left or right, he makes you think, and because he takes both sides apart. The great deformation, the corruption, capitalism in America, it is a page-turner, and a heart-turner at that. David, thank you very much.
Yes, we know it's coming. And so now you've got Fox News interviewing David Stockman, and he's holding his own, and he is telling us the truth. Everybody else doesn't want to say the truth because, the emperor has no clothes. That is the point. And when the Fed stops printing, when they start talking about raising interest rates, it could literally shift overnight, because gamblers are like a flock of birds. Have you ever watched a huge flock just turn on a dime? It's so fascinating. It's like the sense one turns and everybody feels it. And that's what the stock market is like. It is really scary. And I really do believe that the mattress does have more benefits now. We've talked about what can we do. So that's something to think about. I did want to just briefly zip updates through the various lawsuits. Here's a lawsuit against Bank of America. And of course, B of A is urging the federal judge to dismiss the lawsuit. The U.S. is urging the judge to not dismiss the lawsuit. So they're talking to the judge, and this is about the taxpayer losses by selling toxic mortgage loans to Fannie and Freddie. And the bank should be liable, the U.S. is saying that, under the tough fraud law. And, of course, B of A wants to scoot out from under it, of course. And if they can convince a judge to do that, then they win. That is the unfortunate level of corruption. You can find the key people, and if you can twist them, then you win. And that's what the banks have been doing. Wells Fargo. Of course, we just talked a couple of days ago about this, again, similar kind of lawsuit against them, misconduct, the U.S. against Wells Fargo for the FHA, selling them toxic loans. And of course, Wells Fargo is trying to push on the judge. This is how they do it. They push on the judges. The people in the trenches, we already know this, the people fighting the lawsuits. Here's another one. I thought this was cool. B of A CEO. Let's go after the CEOs, must face a mortgage disclosures lawsuit. And down here, you're going to read, this was on the 17th of April, which was just 2 days ago. A federal judge has revived a securities fraud lawsuit accusing B of A corporate chief executive Brian Moynihan, his predecessor Kenneth Lewis, and others of misleading shareholders about the risk the bank might have to buy back large amounts of soured mortgages. And so let's get them on securities fraud. Let's get them on something. We all support that. I wanted to just bring to you some of the articles and a brief overview. The activists in San Francisco are very well organized. They have been fighting like crazy. Their lack of success is is discouraging. And I've been watching them because there is virtually no other as well organized activists fighting foreclosures that I know about in the country. And they have several groups involved. They're doing everything they can possibly think of, including harassing the CEOs when a foreclosure comes. A auction comes due. They go to the auction steps and they harass the people trying to sell there. They barricade the sheriffs in the foreclosed homes, trying to keep the people in the homes. Here they've gone to the pension funds because the San Francisco Pension Fund, the city's, has been investing in the mortgage-backed securities, and specifically for Wells Fargo. And so the activists are going there saying, stop that. Stop aiding and abetting this delinquency. Move your money out of these mortgage-backed securities. And the pension fund has refused to do that. That's what this article is about. So then they went to the pension fund, and here's a great picture of Grace. She's such an activist. I just admire these people because they are so dedicated and they work constantly in every way they possibly can, even trying to raise funds from an investor to help buy the house so that the person can buy it back or lease option it or something. I mean, they're just trying everything they can for everybody. And it's really difficult to watch very few things work. Anyway, they've gone to the board and they've said, look, if you won't divest, at least use your clout, your money clout, to, make these banks toe the mark, do something. And the board decided to do nothing. So it's very difficult. I feel like you're trying to, push a rock with a noodle, a cooked noodle. You have no clout, no push. And that's why we need millions of homeowners. We need more people, because individuals and activists by themselves, we cannot do this ourselves. I did want to point out that there are discussions. These are the interesting shifts that are happening, so we can't quit. We have to keep pushing. But the House and the Senate are revisiting too big to fail. And this article talks about Representative Brad Sherman, he's Democrat, California, and Senator Bernie Sanders, Independent in Vermont. They've reintroduced too big to fail, too big to exist act in the House and the Senate. And they would literally break up these banks. I've highlighted, a piece of the article for you to review when you're looking at it. In my view, no single financial institution should have holdings so extensive that its failure could send the world economy into crisis, Senator Sanders said. At the very least, no institution, no CEO in America should be above the law. If an institution is too big to fail, it's too big to exist. And I think you and I would have to agree. And then here's an article sort of along that same line. Actually, there's 3 Wall Street analysts that this week, this was printed on the 12th, so that was last Friday. 3 Wall Street analysts have written reports about the possibility of the biggest banks breaking themselves up to boost profitability, signaling that investors may be more willing to embrace an idea that is still toxic to lawmakers in Washington. Why? Maybe they wouldn't get as many campaign funds. This is why number one issue to change is the statutes at the state level stopping the huge donations from individuals. If we spread out the funders, remember we talked about that yesterday, if the representatives couldn't be bought off with huge checks by one individual, then we would have a better representation. So that's an article that's talking about how the banks would actually be more profitable if we did that. And then before we listen to the discussion of ending the fractional reserve system, it's just truly amazing to me. People are shocked that actually academics and people in the system are talking about this openly. I wanted to give you the 3 links for the false flags. So, before that, here's the flash mob. So how are people reacting. Well, Occupy's had marches, and we've had campaigns and petitions, and in Spain they break into flamenco right in the bank lobby. You can watch the little video. One guy starts singing, and he starts singing about how he hates the banks and they're ruining his life, and a lady starts doing a dance, and pretty quick all the other ladies join in, and they obviously all know the dance, and it's a dance of protest. This is how they are expressing themselves, and I think this is a really good way. It's almost like Gandhi. You just keep pushing that this is not right, and we're not going to be violent, but we are going to make ourselves known. Okay, the 3 false flags link. This is in The Greatest Truth Never Told, and this is episode 51. You need to read that. He talks about the 3 false flag attacks, the type, the economic, military. He talks about that. You can start from the beginning and watch all the way through, or just this episode. But he has some really interesting facts and some very classic snips that really make you sit back on your heels and you go, really? I haven't seen that snip before. And these are just snips of our leaders saying things that are pretty shocking. And then this is Boston Black Ops. This is a guy that is explaining about the fact that he feels that the Boston Marathon bombings were black flag, or a false flag. And so he talks, and then he directs you to this website, Infowars.com. And this particular page has a bunch of different pictures that others have been able to get and show that seem to disagree with the story, the FBI story. So look at it yourselves, decide how you think about it. Be aware that this is what governments often do, and why would we expect our government to be any different, particularly given the fact that they are not prosecuting the banksters, and we know the banksters are totally corrupt, and we know everything that they've been doing is fraud as a business model. So, it tends to lend credibility to the fact that as this corruption continues, it could lead into things that are, pretty unnice and nasty. But this is what I want you to hear. I just got this morning. This is where they're talking about stopping the fractional reserve system, shifting that away from the banks. They're having a discussion. It's really cool.
Good afternoon. I'm still reporting on the economy from Los Angeles. So about 5 a.m. this morning, LA time, a friend in Ireland emailed me that there was a conference starting in about an hour at the Philadelphia Federal Reserve, where top academics would be discussing ending fractional reserve lending. Well, I didn't believe it, but since there was a streaming live feed, I tuned in. Soon my jaw was hitting the floor in awe. Real live academics were, for the first time that I knew of, actually taking an honest look at monetary reform. The first 2 speakers were great as they examined alternatives to the current system of basically taking the money power away from the commercial banks by one means or another. As soon as I can get my hands on the video, I will put it up on this channel. But then Professor Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University in New York came on the screen. He was too busy to attend the conference as he was in the middle of dealing with a pack of outraged European bankers who were in New York to vent their anger at how the American banking community had deceived them by selling them bogus, toxic assets. Sachs took no prisoners in his off-the-cuff presentation. He lit into the American banking community full force. I scrambled for some recording device to capture at least the audio. All I could find was my trusty iPhone, but that was good enough to get the flavor of it.
I think, your point, Larry, is a very powerful one. And at a not a literal level of single-purpose banking, but of a more general level, Glass-Steagall successfully did that for quite a long time. And its removal was a very, very cynical play by Rubin, Summers, Clinton, Graham, and others who all had very strong interests, personal interests in the outcomes of that deregulation, and exploited the gaps that they created, and then, to the chagrin of some of us at least, were invited right back into the White House in early 2009 after they had made this calamitous mess to be the ones supposedly to fix it. And I know that Summers, for example, continued to really institute moral hazard policies right and left by fighting against any limits on compensation of these people who had entered into the breach. So this is a case where institutional reform of separating fractional reserve banking and basically the provision of liquidity from gambling should be done. But I would add this other point, which is that a lot of what's happened actually and what's been revealed is, in my view, prima facie criminal behavior. It's financial fraud on a very large extent. There's also a tremendous amount of insider trading, and you can even watch it when you're living in New York, how that works. So it's not so mysterious. But we don't even act. I take John Paulson, for example. Paulson worked together with Goldman Sachs to defraud massively many European banks which bought the toxic mortgages that Paulson had put together. When this Abacus deal was taken up by the SEC, Goldman ended up paying a small fine. The chair of Goldman, of course, continued in his position and continued at White House state dinners. And Paulson wasn't even mentioned once in any of the proceedings. And he took home a $1 billion paycheck the next year, even as Goldman was paying a roughly $700 million fine, if I remember correctly, for the abuse that Paulson was part of. I can't believe, no matter what the financial regulations, we can't do better than that. That's really pathetic.
As a former congressional staff attorney, retired tax lawyer, looking at the possibilities of small steps that might be taken, how affirmative would you think reenactment of Glass-Steagall would be?
I think that it is quite important to recreate a mechanism where liquidity is separated from large-scale financial gambling. It's really, in my opinion, as a macroeconomist, it's the collapse of liquidity that is the real macro danger. The rest is the collapse of confidence, lawlessness, decency, and so on. But what made Lehman so damaging, of course, was how it infected the money markets, the interbank loans, and the complete drying up of commercial paper. This was the devastating effect. It was basically March 1933 replayed. So liquidity is what is the real value here from a macroeconomic point of view. Loss of wealth, I could care less whether they make more or less money. I don't even care whether they make big money particularly, except I think a lot of them are crooks, and that it's based on a lot of nefarious behavior. But the macroeconomic significance is a kind of Diamond-Dybvig banking crisis, which we know to be part of a fractional reserve banking system. And it seems to me, analytically, we have two we have basically two levels of decision making. One is separating liquidity in the banking sector from other kinds of speculative financial activity. This I would do for sure. And I would never have put Goldman Sachs back under the Fed's protection as a banking unit so that it could receive direct loans from the Fed. That's ridiculous, but and sad, actually. But the second point then is Larry's point, and this is whether fractional reserve banking itself has value enough to keep it in its current form. I'm not convinced, I have to say, one way or another. I'm kind of, grew up in a fractional reserve banking system. I do believe that it provides liquidity in normal times if regulation is good. I tend to believe that there is value in reserve banking, but it's also highly volatile, as theorists have recognized at least for 150 years. And as Milton Friedman agreed, as Diamond said, as Larry has pointed out, and I think we have the choice, could we really have liquidity without fractional reserve banking? If we could, we might be able to address, another degree of this problem. The final point, of course, is separating the politicians from the crooks. But maybe that's so close together that they can't actually be separated. Maybe it's just the same community.
Yeah, hi, this is Mike from Holmes. I'm one of the Chicago Times. I added a question, but I just wanted to say it is possible to separate liquidity positions from credit positions, and that's what the Chicago Times is all about, and I think that is definitely right. My question was, your international experience, you're starting off by saying you're talking to a lot of international decision makers. What is the sense there about the readiness to try different monetary and financial approaches to what we have today? Do they feel that they could start to do that on their own in their own countries, or do they feel that they depend on the center countries like the United States and the Europeans to do something first?
I think in general for most small countries or most developing countries, I'll put aside the very largest ones, there is a sense of almost complete dependency on the international system. Their payments, their lines of credit, interbank markets, the need for swap facilities with the Fed or the ECB, the pervasiveness of tax havens, the extent of flight capital from their countries, the legal structures where basically very clever U.S. lawyers help to free all of these countries from their tax revenues. They feel very much dependent on a system that they feel is dysfunctional, but they've been well schooled that for the last 25 years their goal is to be part of the international system. They just woke up to a system that they find very destabilizing, and they don't see any clarity of the way forward. And most of the advice that they get is to be part of the system and be quiet, basically. This is how the system is. You join it. You stay in good terms with the Fed, with the IMF, with others, and there is very little sense of autonomous potential among these countries. Really, I can only emphasize the palpable anger and vulnerability that's felt right now is very, very high.
My name is Dennis Peacock, and I represent the faith-based side of macroeconomics. And I just want to congratulate you that you pulled us back to the reality that in spite of all the complexities and theories and mechanics that we deal with in economics, that economics is really about values and the values and ethics of people. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for saying it and practicing it. I do believe, by the way, I'm just going to end here because I've been pulled. I have to run to the UN, in fact, right now. I believe we have a crisis of values that is extremely deep because the regulations and the legal structures need reform. But I meet a lot of these people on Wall Street on a regular basis right now. I'm going to put it very bluntly. I regard the moral environment as pathological. And I'm talking about the human interactions that I have. I've not seen anything like this, not felt it so palpably. These people are out to make billions of dollars, and nothing should stop them from that. They have no responsibility to pay taxes. They have no responsibility to their clients. They have no responsibility to people, counterparties in transactions. They are tough, greedy, aggressive, and feel absolutely out of control in a quite literal sense. And they have gamed the system to a remarkable extent, and they have a docile president, a docile White House, and a docile regulatory system that absolutely can't find its voice. It's terrified of these companies. If you look at the campaign contributions, which I happened to do yesterday for another purpose, the financial markets are the #1 campaign contributors in the U.S. system now. We have a corrupt politics to the core, I'm afraid to say. No party is, there's not both parties are up to their necks in this. This has nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans. It really doesn't have anything to do with right wing or left wing, by the way. The corruption is, as far as I can see, everywhere. But what it's led to is this sense of impunity that is really stunning, and you feel it on the individual level right now. And it's very, very unhealthy. I have waited for 4 years, 5 years now, to see one figure on Wall Street speak in a moral language. And I've not seen it once. And that is shocking to me. And if they won't, I've waited for a judge, for our president, for somebody, and it hasn't happened. And by the way, it's not going to happen anytime soon, it seems.
Professor Sachs, thank you so much.
I'm still reporting on the economy from Los Angeles. Good day.
So there you have it, guys. Until the control of the issue of currency and credit is restored to government, honest government, and recognized as its most sacred responsibility, all talk of the sovereignty is idle and futile. And this was a quote from the Prime Minister of Canada in 1934. Here's the point, guys. You've got it from the insiders. It is a complete corruption. And I'll tell you, if you don't remember anything else that was said in that video, you remember this. Paulson was paid $1 billion. Do we need any more than that? That pretty well encapsulates it. They've completely bought him off. Everybody's in the cartel. And that is why the people are suffering. If he's interacting with these Wall Street monsters, and never once in the last 5 years has any of them spoken in any moral manner, they don't pay taxes, they don't think of anybody else other than just the billions of dollars that they can create and make. And like you and I are going, so what's the point? Well, that is the point, and it's been quoted that the love of money is the root of all evil. And you think about that, these people have fallen in love simply with the money. And this is where we're at. This is the root of all evil. So I wanted to also show you one more website as we invite our guest to join us today. This is the American Monetary Institute. It's the independent study of monetary history, theory, and reform. They've got conferences. They talk about the various folks that are involved in bills and efforts to change it, like Congressman Kucinich. The conference is going to be in September 2013. So I just really wanted to get this link on the show today so that people, as we look to how can we migrate out of this mess? What can we do to solve it? We now have the European bankers are really upset. We've got the banks from all these small countries just scared to death because in this country with the Federal Reserve, we have a monster out of control. And it will ruin the planet. And I think these bankers are probably even more aware of it than you and I. We're just starting to learn about the web of debt and, the collapse of the currency and what are we going to do about that? And these bankers see it coming. And this is why we need to join with them. Let's get them on our side. Safat. Hi, Dr. Carmina. Welcome to the show today.
Hi, is it CJ?
Yes, it is. And you're on the air.
Okay.
And so you were referred to me by some other contacts, and you've shared with me some brief information about your situation. Can you identify yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then the mess that you've been going through, the heartache and hassle?
Sure. How long is your program?
Okay, you got to keep it short. Just the highlights. And like I've already told the doctor, the fact of the matter is her story is not that unfamiliar to me. I hear this repeatedly from people all over the country. So share with us your situation, please.
Sure. Well, let me start off by saying that I'm a 16-year, 80% service-connected Air Force veteran, and I also hold a doctorate in psychology. And what I'm about to tell you is just continues to blow my mind every day. And even though I know that I'm just among thousands of homeowners that are going through this, it's still in my mind unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I totally agree. I totally understand where you're at because I'm in the same boat.
Oh my goodness. But I have to tell you, unfortunately, I don't have the kind of legal mind that I feel sometimes is needed to go through what we're going through. I mean, it's just heartbreaking to hear the many stories of people that have already been wronged and defrauded.
Yes.
So my story begins about mid-2010. I am one of those many homeowners that purchased a home and financed their home through Countrywide. Countrywide, as all of you know, was bought out by Bank of America. And I don't know if that's the right term to use, but now
that's okay.
It's Bank of America.
Correct.
So in 2010, my husband went from earning approximately $15,000 a month to a significant reduction in income to about $3,000 a month. Well, knowing what was ahead, we immediately contacted our mortgage company, and we informed them that we now fell on, we were among all those many homeowners that had, changes in their circumstances, and I knew that we qualified for a loan modification.
Yes.
So that was the beginning of the nightmare.
Yes.
At that point, we were told because we were current, we were not eligible for a loan modification, which we knew was incorrect because we knew that we did qualify. So, speaking with Bank of America I love your analogy, CJ, that you used earlier about trying to move a rock with a cooked noodle.
That's how I feel all the time. I've got little noodles, and I'm trying to shift a mountain.
Exactly. So this, it was just months and months of, we're working on your application, we're still reviewing it, continue to make your payments, and we kept telling them, we're to the point that we just simply cannot afford our monthly mortgage. We need a modification. So that went on for months, CJ. Months,
Of course.
months. And then we received some mail, and we replied to this mail, and it was from what we could see, a reputable law firm who was representing millions of homeowners throughout the country in a mass tort litigation against Bank of America. So at that point, we felt like we had no other options. We had no other choices. I mean, we had tried everything within our power to get Bank of America to modify our loan.
Right.
Well, that is when our nightmare just became, what's worse than a nightmare?
Well, this is what I call insult to injury. You've been injured. The bank has been lying to you intentionally and repeatedly to force you into foreclosure with every way they possibly can. It is intentional. They know they're lying to you constantly, for example, by saying you have to default before we can look at your loan modification. And then that's a perfect setup. And this has happened to millions of owners. I just can hardly bear it. Some other predator comes along and adds insult to this, starts cheating you with false promises, whether it's a loan modification, or we can get it, just, send me $1,500 up front, or it's an attorney. And I think that's where you're headed, right? That this thing was totally not accurate.
Oh, CJ, but they were so clever and they were so brilliant as to how they presented all of their claims.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, I mean, I'm not ignorant. I mean, I completed
Exactly.
a doctorate, and I fell for it. Because everything that they gave us, there was nothing questionable.
Right. Right.
Believed it.
Let me just say, nothing questionable that you could come up with. You couldn't create a question that could help you do this analysis. And trust me, please do not feel like you're just stupid, because you're not. They are cheating. They are manipulating smart real estate brokers. I am contacted by agents and brokers and investors and everybody in the real estate industry that you would expect would even be perhaps better prepared than you are to think about, okay, how does this scam work? What question should I be asking to verify to myself if this is a scam or not? Smart people, occasionally, if they found out about me, they will send me an email and they will say, well, what do you think about this? And I'm so pleased they do, because I have enough knowledge and have seen enough of these scams to be able to hone in on a question or a statement that they made that person would never even have dreamed, was a false statement. It sounded good. And unless you've seen these over and over and over and know what to look for and how they, like you were just saying, how you can read between those cleverly worded lines, it's really easy to get scammed.
Well, it happened to us. We were scammed. We were defrauded, but the interesting thing, CJ, that so let me fast forward, and I'll just give you the Reader's Digest version of the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey once said.
Okay.
So we were defrauded, and the day before our home was going to be foreclosed on. It had a foreclosure sale date of February 23rd of 2012. So I'm still on the phone with whom I think is a representative of Precision Law Center, and I'm on the phone with them, and I'm telling them, you guys are not doing anything. Our home will be foreclosed on tomorrow. And this is exactly what he said. At this point, there is nothing that we can do. The only option that you have right now is to file for bankruptcy. Those words came as a shock to me.
Yeah.
For months, they were supposedly working on our case.
Right.
Now all of a sudden there's nothing that we can do after we've already taken your money.
Right.
And now the only thing that you can do is go file for bankruptcy to avoid the foreclosure sale.
Yes.
So that night I was up all night. I filled out, what I could. I had never filed bankruptcy in my life. So I filled out the paperwork. I was at the court steps that Wednesday morning to avoid foreclosure. And the lady just looked at me and she said, "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" I said, "No, I don't."
Oh, jeez.
All I know is that I'm submitting this application, or whatever you call it. I'm filing for bankruptcy to avoid foreclosure on our home. This is what I've been told, and I will have to figure out how to get out of this after I file for bankruptcy. But for now, you have to take my bankruptcy application to avoid foreclosure. So I avoided foreclosure 3 minutes prior to the sale date, or the time that the house was going to be foreclosed on. So that happened February 2012. In the meantime, she was right. I had no idea what I was doing. So then she says, the best thing that you can do is to hire a bankruptcy attorney and let him help you figure out the rest. And that's exactly what I did. We hired a bankruptcy attorney, and then a Chapter 13 was followed by a Chapter 7. By this point, everybody that we tell, we were defrauded. We were told that we were going to be joining a mass tort litigation against our lender, and nothing. Everybody just looked at me like, "Lady, you must be crazy." So not only did we get the "you must be, a little stupid" kind of look,
Right.
also felt like how could we have missed that? How could we have not read between the lines?
Well, let me tell you one thing that really encouraged me. It was years ago, and it was Trump, Donald Trump, and he has that TV show, I forgot what it's called. But he was being interviewed once, and the interviewer asked him if he had ever been cheated, defrauded. Somebody comes and lies to him. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm lied to all the time," and succumbs to being cheated like that. And I thought, something? If Trump can actually be cheated and scammed, then why am I beating myself up? And so the fact of the matter is, our whole society is based on a level of trust and honesty. And a lot of us, the 80%, are slow to catch on how the level of corruption has risen. And the fact is, nowadays, anybody says anything, I'm pretty much a skeptic, and that's, I'm afraid, where we have to be at now to protect ourselves. It's really unfortunate. So then in bankruptcy, now you just said that has been just finally discharged.
Right. Okay. So last month, our Chapter 7 was discharged, and about 2 weeks after, we received a notification of a rescheduled foreclosure sale date. At that point, I felt like, okay, now we have nothing to protect us. We are no longer under bankruptcy protection.
Right.
Bank of America is still unwilling to work with us because throughout all these months, I'm still trying to contact Bank of America to say, look, we were defrauded, and now we have to come up with a way to talk to each other because this isn't working. And, of course, now they're in the position. Before it was, we can't talk to you because you're current.
Right.
And then we fell behind. And then we can't talk to you because you joined a mass tort litigation.
Right.
And then we can't talk to you because now you're in bankruptcy. So 2 months, a month ago it was discharged. We get that notification that the foreclosure sale date has been rescheduled. And I immediately get online because I feel like there's got to be something out there. There's got to be help out there. Somehow I stumbled on Ron O'Donnell's tube video. And when I heard it, I knew then we are just among millions of people that have been wronged, that have been defrauded, and it's time to fight back.
Exactly.
And when I spoke with, he, bless his heart, I mean, he knew to put his contact information in the YouTube video. So I called him and I said, Ron, here's my situation. Please tell me what to do. So Ron, he immediately gets online and he finds out that, yes, in fact, Precision Law Center has been doing this to many, many people.
Yes.
So now I have ammunition, against Precision Law Center, and I can show people, look, I'm not crazy.
Right.
I was truly defrauded.
Right.
So then I contact our senator's office, and I explain to them the situation. I contact the National Foreclosure Hotline, and right now where it stands is that the foreclosure sale date that we had of April 17th has been postponed, and I spoke with a representative from the National Foreclosure Hotline yesterday, and yesterday she informed me that the foreclosure has been removed from my file, period. Whether I believe that or not, I have not seen anything in writing. And one thing that I learned from Ron is that if you don't have it in writing, it just didn't happen.
Exactly. So are you expecting something in writing? And of course, there was no explanation as to why this happened.
Exactly. No
Right.
explanation. They know Bank of America has been in contact, or the Senator Michael Bennett's office, our Democratic senator here in Colorado. I'm not saying that I'm Democratic, but I just contacted them.
Right.
They contacted Bank of America and as well as the National Foreclosure Hotline. So they have both been in touch with Bank of America on my behalf, and they have not provided anything in writing. In fact, while I was waiting to get on the show, I received a phone call from Bank of America, and it was the newly assigned client relationship manager. So I'm back to where I was back in 2010, being bounced back and forth between one representative to the other.
Yes.
And I didn't talk to him because I told him that I was waiting for a phone call, that I couldn't talk to him. But as soon as I do call him back, I know what, I just feel like I just went through tsunami.
Yes.
2 years worth of just one nightmare after another.
Yeah.
And then I'm just back in the ocean in just a different boat, but nowhere closer to a loan modification.
Did Ron talk to you about filing an OCC complaint letter, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or did he talk about the qualified written request? I don't know if you've done either of those strategies, but I do recommend you do those.
Okay, an OCC complaint?
Yeah, if you go to my website. In fact, I'm going to bring up my website again for everybody, because the fact is I get requests all the time. People are just frantic. I've got a sale date next week or even next month. Go to hofj.org. I've got it up on the screen right now. And under foreclosure defense, take the first item on that big long list called foreclosure defense. And I've put together, I have not updated this. So this was last updated, in about February, March, whenever the last video I did. I've done some little workshops. There's 11 foreclosure defense considerations that I've written out. And then on each one of those, I've done a little video workshop to help people understand how it goes, because I simply do not have time to explain it any more than this. That's why I did this. And so number one, no matter what happens, if you don't get a single point of contact, if you are being dual tracked, if they deny your loan modification, especially in California, the new law says you have the right to appeal that. And also for everybody else in the country, that right to appeal the loan mod denial, I believe, is in the consent judgments, which are right here under item number 1. So there's my little video of how to do the OCC complaint. And now hers is Bank of America, so that would be the OCC overseeing the mega banks. And you can see right here under who to contact. So if it's a consent judgment, GMAC or Ally Bank, B of A, Chase, Citibank, or Wells, that's OCC. If it's under the consent orders, these other bankers are the CFPB. And here's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau website. File a complaint with them. It's a very similar process. And at least that typically should delay. Most of the people that do this have feedback to me that they've been able to delay their auction dates at least 60 days. If you keep complaining, it should keep postponing. And definitely follow the other advice that I give about, forcing this information onto the foreclosure trustee's legal department. And threaten them personally. Do anything you possibly can. Don't just sit there. Start stabbing back. This is a battle because they get a free house. If you give up, they get a free house. And that's the point. So then item number 2, submit at least 2 qualified written request letters. There's a little video overview. I've got a sample letters. And then if you have time after that, go get your foreclosure documents if they've already filed a notice of default and notice of sale. And if so, in your case, they had a notice of sale, so we know they have these other documents on your on record. So go to the registrar or the recorder's office, get those documents, watch my little videos about how to analyze them, put that together, and then depending on which notaries and signers on those documents, you might be able to take advantage of strategy number 5. And all of these are basically free strategies, except it's going to drive you crazy with your time. You don't have to hire anybody to do this. In fact, people have asked me, can I hire somebody to do this for me? So I'm trying to work on that because it is it's relatively complicated and time consuming. And easier for someone that already gets it than somebody that's like, what are you even talking about? What's a notary? and then, of course, ending with the owner's statement of suspicious documents. And if you have the time to do those kinds of things, I highly recommend that you do, because these strategies interact with other agencies that are supposed to be regulating this industry, and at least there are some laws and legal standing that you can capitalize on. And if you ever are going into another lawsuit, for example, wrongful foreclosure or a declaratory lawsuit where you force the bank to prove in court they have the right to foreclose and to collect on that note, you must do the qualified written request and bring that evidence that you sent that and this is what they responded. And if you can find problems, inaccuracies in their response, which is almost 100% if you look at what they send you back, then that gives you more standing. Anyway, it's a huge, long battle, and mostly my effort, because this is all we've really been able to do at a level of not without the vast numbers of attorneys that we need. We need 1,000 attorneys that know what they're doing and have pleadings that would actually work in court. So I'm trying to work on that too, because everybody wants an attorney that would work. Are you kidding? But that's the point. Most of the lawsuits are not working, and many attorneys are just collecting fees, like and defrauding clients, and getting away with that too. So
it hasn't stopped. It has not stopped, because when I went online to see if there was anything else that I could possibly do, and somehow you enter your name and your zip code, and I'm just going to tell you really quickly what happened. Another firm similar to Precision Law Center contacted me and basically said the same things, the same lines, and I have emails that they sent me, and I said to them, it is beyond belief that you people have not stopped. You are predators without a conscience.
Exactly. And I do believe, you're now, you have a degree in psychology, right?
Sometimes I wish it was
Yeah, but this is human behavior. And this is, there's a saying, if the king is evil, all the king's counselors are evil. It filters down. And we have at the top level of government in our country a corrupt collusion where the politicians and the banksters are just virtually one and the same. It's a revolving door. And every fraud is fine. Nobody's been prosecuted. Nobody's going to be prosecuted. These agencies are the corruption and the people leading them. And when that happens, all of the other folks in the country look around and say, well, gee, look at how they're getting away with it. And so we have this, if you will, a rising tide of corruption and evil where it's okay to cheat people because that's how it's done. Fraud is a business model. And that's what we can naturally and logically expect, in my opinion, in this country. And that is, as the top level are corrupt, then that just flows down. Others say, well, I can be corrupt too then. And of course, being corrupt is very lucrative. They cheat you. They don't have to do anything. You give them all your money. They win. You lose.
Right.
And it's very troubling and discouraging, which is another reason that we're working so hard to try to, get criminal prosecutions against these people. Without criminal prosecution, civil prosecution is nothing. They just use your money to pay off the fines. I've called it a fraud tax. They're fined $16 million, but they made $6 billion. I mean, hello. I'd pay $16 million if I knew that was the penalty for making $6 billion. You see what I mean?
Right.
And so this is truly a caving in of our morals and our principles. That's why I've called it a moral hazard.
It truly is. I mean, it is, the biggest fraud and deception in American history, and the victims are Americans.
Yes. And truly, I would say it's not just the victim of you and me and those that are facing foreclosure or those that have lost their homes. It's a victim of every American, because as fraud rises, more and more of our values are corrupted. And as the Fed just makes trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars with no end in sight, and eventually will collapse the planet and the dollar, which is where I think this is very, very well headed. I don't see how it cannot stop, because right now we're in a bubble, and as the balloon inflates, we're okay, but as soon as it deflates, I mean, we just saw David Stockman talking about that this morning on his little video that I played. Then we're in for a world of hurt, and that's going to happen on you, on me, on all the reporters, on everybody, all the teachers, all of our city government, all of our fire people, our police people, all the retailers, all the store owners, all the store workers. It's really going to hurt everybody. And this is part of the real danger I want people to start to comprehend.
It saddens me to think that there are. I knew that I needed to fight. I knew that with every cell in my being.
Yes.
And it's heartbreaking to know that there are millions and millions of people who, for whatever reason, felt that, I was wronged and I guess I just need to walk away. And they don't have what it takes to say enough is enough and we're going to fight back. And they lost their homes.
Well, a lot of people, I swear, they have bought into the myth, and it's a bank media published myth, and that is, it's all the homeowner's fault. You were stupid. You took out a loan you couldn't afford. You're the one that has hurt this economy. And they've bought into that myth. In fact, on my website, on the homepage, I want to show the picture of that right now because it's such a classic picture. This is the pundits, the media, and fed by the banks are saying this is all your fault as they look at the poor homeowner. You bought a house you couldn't really afford. And yet, as you look at the picture, the homeowner had nothing to do with it. They stole our signatures on our loan applications, whether they accepted the application or not. And they securitized those loan apps. They securitized the denied loan applications. They've securitized the loans. They securitized car debt, student debt. Anytime you ever sign an application for anything, they're securitizing that and reaping billions and trillions for themselves while they're just throwing the planet under the bus. And that is my 25-word summary of what's going on right now. How we fight back, we change the money. We have to change the money system. I've been saying for a long time, and it is all about the fractional reserve system creating wealth for private pockets. That's what the Federal Reserve is. And until we stop that and if we allow fractional reserve creation, that would be for public benefit. It would be from public banks, could never be gambled with, would not line private pockets, but would be the public benefit, because there is the need for liquidity. I mean, that's what we just heard them talking about. We need to have enough medium of exchange so that we can grow and build. How do you get that? Well, fractional reserve banking is how we've been getting that. The problem was we allowed individuals, starting with JP Morgan, and then of course went into Chase. They're the prime starters, movers and shakers, and they get the prime benefit. And this is why I want to say one more time, thanks Carmina for letting me lecture here just a little bit. At the end of the show, open up your wallet, pull out a dollar bill and read the top line. Let's never ever forget, and pay attention. Those are the Federal Reserve notes. They're notes, they're loans. That dollar is a loan to you and me, and we have to pay interest on that. That's why we're in this mess. That's why they've fraudulently foreclosed. They did the fraudulent loans. Now they're fraudulently foreclosing. They're getting it's just a cycle, and they've been doing it for so long. That's the way business operates. And you and I are warriors in this machine, trying to fight back and help others recognize that it's worth fighting back. Stop buying into the myth that it was all the people's fault. It was none of the people's fault. They were fraudulently induced into that loan. That loan was a toxic loan. It never ever should have been approved for dissemination. The bank never should have been allowed. Countrywide should not have been allowed to offer loans like that. That's the start of it. Anyway.
And I'm in the process. I will do what you suggested. File the OCC complaint, as well as follow the steps that you outline in that foreclosure defense tab.
Yes.
And I'm in the process of filing a complaint with the Attorney General here in Colorado, as well as filing a complaint with the State Bar in California. And it just feels like it's never going to end.
I do appreciate that feeling, and it can be very discouraging and debilitating. The fact of the matter is, it's worth fighting. Please don't give up. Those of us that are on this live stream, the viewers, myself, as we share information back and forth, we have already discussed and mentioned how helpful it is to be involved in a group. Others that are helping each one of us, we're each helping each other stay in the fight. Because being alone, it's just such a massive machine and feels like it'll never end. But together, it's one of those cliche statements, united we stand, divided we fall. And boy, have they divided us up. They've chopped us and sliced and diced us as many ways possible with the securitizations and everything. But as we can put the pieces back together and unite together and maintain our helping of each other, the people can win. Because here's the point. Just think about it. They've defrauded now. They've cheated. They've harmed. They sent out millions of checks. Now those are people that already lost their homes to foreclosure. We need, this is our target. We need to target those people and tell them they were cheated. And this is proof that they were cheated. If we can motivate and mobilize 4, 5, 10 million people in this country, trust me, the people can win. We have the boots. They don't have the boots. There's just a few people. And right now, the only way they're keeping us down is that we're still divided. So anytime, this is why all of the activists and the homeowners and the people that start to get involved with this, they're reaching out. And at first, it's gonna feel like we're not getting anywhere. It feels like we're just putting more and more effort into a big black hole. But we are filling the hole. We may not be able to see that yet, but you have to just maintain confidence. We're filling the hole, and we're gonna get more and more people. It's like a snowball. It's a snowball effect. We've got a little tiny ball, and we're trying to pack more snow around it. But gradually, as it rolls and rolls and collects more and more, eventually it'll be a real power that will win. The people can win. We will win.
Great. And you know, I truly believe that they believe that they are above the law.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
And we have to prove to them that they're not. Nobody is above the law, and nobody has the right to defraud and victimize and do everything that they're doing, because they are not above the law.
That is so true. And then the key is, and I'm always, let's get down to base. I'm a bottom liner. How do we get them, criminally charged? Now, you talked about, you sent a letter to the Attorney General, or you're going to call the Attorney General in Colorado. What do you think that there might be any way that AG would step up and do any kind of prosecution? So these are things to think about. How can we get the people in the state, because the AG is going to say to you what our AG says to us, and that is, we can only prosecute, bad behavior of entities that are in our state. And so I went through all of those foreclosure trust emails that are in California, and I identified them. Said, okay, let's go after these because they're operating in this state. This is how we can get them. So I'm going to recommend everybody in every state look at all of the banks, all of the foreclosure trust emails, servicers, and this, of course, is why servicers are operating overseas. Are you kidding? They don't want AGs to come after them. But they've got to have some kind of, we need to try to figure out how we can get a grip on getting criminal prosecution started. Because again, now see, I showed today they're criminally prosecuting, but that's the U.S., federal, against the B of A CEO, Moynihan. And that's for securities fraud. But there's got to be some way, we've got some good collective minds here thinking about this, that the people can get their officials to start criminally prosecuting. Because once it starts, it'll snowball. I'm sure it will snowball. And that will give more and more of the people, the boots, us, encouragement to go after them. You know what I mean? Right.
So, in your opinion, at this point, the homeowners, those of us who do want to fight back, then can you give me in a nutshell, yes, to do all the things that you mentioned to do. What else do we need to do to join the march, so to speak?
Well, we're trying to build that. So different activists they have, like Jed in Mendocino County. I call him my lead dog there for presenting the forged documents. The owner's statement is suspicious document. We call it suspicious, trying to stay away from the F words, fraud and forgery. And he's made copies of that, and he's sending it out to the media. And that was one of the ideas that I had, because how can homeowners across the country really join together when we know that physically marching in the streets just isn't going to cut it? How can we start criminal prosecutions? How can we break through the media black hole? Because, it's like a blackout. In fact, we've actually had some media reporters actually tell some activists, I can't write an article on your activism, on the foreclosure crisis because I'm not allowed to. So it's a blackout. And so my thought was, well, let's analyze our forged documents that they use to do foreclosure, and let's go through and make a statement of suspicious documents, and then let's redact our personal name and address, because that's not really important. The important thing is that they've recorded all these forged documents, and then let's make 100 copies, and then let's just send them out to all the media. Let's send them to Fox News and CNBC and MSNBC and ABC and CNN and the local papers and the San Francisco Chronicle and the New York Times. And if they were getting hundreds of these statements of suspicious documents, I think it'd make a statement. It's been hard to get people to do it. It's a lot of work. And I think a lot of people are, they run out of time, or, it's an individual action you have to do at home, and then you have to collect that, and then you have to mail it out, and you don't know of anybody else that's doing that. So maybe what we need is a owner statement of suspicious document meeting where owners can get together and do their documents together, so that we have some kind of Tupperware parties, something like that. I don't know. Any idea you've got would be so helpful.
Well, I'm definitely going to stay, in tune with everything that your organization is doing, because I think that what you're doing is just remarkable, to say the least.
Well,
and I think that there is strength in numbers.
Yes, I do too. And we thank you so much for sharing and joining with us. We are so sorry that you're facing the calamity that everybody in this country is facing. And yet I have had to come to the point, because I've been beating myself up. Hey, I'm a real estate broker. Why didn't I see this coming? You know what I mean? And the fact is, virtually nobody saw it coming. You don't see fraud as a train engine steaming down on you, because it's just not the way business has been done. And so what we have to do is say, something, it wasn't my fault. I now am going to stop blaming myself. I'm going to pick up the pieces, and I'm going to look to what can I do to help others and fix this. This is the challenge of our time. I'm sorry. It's our opportunity and our challenge. And sometimes it's tough, and that's okay. We can survive. We're females. We know how to do this. And we're not ever going to give up. We're not going to give in, and we're not going to give up. Isn't that Star Trek? Never give in, never give up. We thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have to close. We're going to have to start buggering the bankers, the politicians, and the bureaucrats, because truly that is our theme song, to leave with encouragement, to keep up the fight, keep bringing others, keep spreading the news, keep putting these links on Facebook, keep talking to the neighbors, keep giving us ideas, because this is the only thing we can do. We must get the people as an uprising so that we can save our country and our homes.
CJ, thank you for everything that you're doing. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to listen to my story and everything that you're doing. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Well, thank you.
So a public thank you to Ron. I don't know
Yes.
him. I haven't met him, but he has also been very helpful in this fight. And he was the person that led me to your organization. So thank you, Ron. Thank you, CJ.
And Ron, we thank you. He's been on the show a couple of times. You can look down at the archived events, because all the events that we've had live stream are archived on our live stream channel. And you can listen to what Ronald is saying. Is very smart, very good, a big fighter. We thank you so much, everybody that's joining the fight in the battle, and keep up the good work. And we'll see you next week. Thanks again. I'm having a little technical problem. Let's get this started. There we go. See you guys.
When I was a lass, I was proud of me class, like my father and mother before me. They taught me to fight for my civil rights, but it's always the same old story. The rich reign supreme while the poor can but dream, and the Labour or Liberal or Tory. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, and if you're one of them, bugger you, and if you're one of them, bugger you.
The system is bent and the money's all spent. We're badgered from every direction. The workers get taxed while the wealthy relax.
With nary a moment's reflection. Where there's brass, there's muck, and they don't give an arse, 'cause we're programmed against insurrection. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, and if you're one of them, bugger you, and if you're one of them, bugger you. Now all you good people with passion to vent, don't give up the struggle for justice. But I've done my time on the protesters' line, and these days I show my dissent by loitering